So the mics are on. We have audio and video ready when you are, Mayor McClure.
Okay. I'm going to call to order this work session on, I don't even know what day it is, August 28th, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. Do we need a roll call for this, Mr. Clerk?
No, I see that there's a quorum here.
Okay,
So
we have four
proceed.
people here, so we do have a quorum. There have been things that have happened to others, but we're here. And what we have tonight is, the topic is child care in Seward. And I think I'm just going to begin by turning it over to the group that's presenting, and you can give us what you got, and then we'll open to the public and we'll talk. So, you want to start?
Okay. Hi, I'm Casey Warner. I'm the Program Director for Happy Youth Programs and Educational Resources. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm excited to give you all some more information on childcare and help you guys understand what's happening. So on the conference line, we do have Stacy Colliard, who is with the Child Care Program Office. We also have Stephanie Berglund, who is the CEO of Red Alaska. Stacy is going to present first, and Chris, the clerk, is just now getting her slides up. And then I'll turn it over to Stacy.
Casey, this is the clicker.
Thank you.
Do you want to test it just to make sure it works?
Yeah. And Stacy, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Stacy.
Okay.
Stacy, I'm gonna run through the slides. So I've got you on your first slide currently.
Okay. And then do you want me to just say next slide? Is that easiest? Because I really can't see what's going on. Oh,
Yeah.
There we go. Perfect.
Yeah, if you just want to let me know to move on to the next slide.
Okay, thank you so much. Hi, my name is Stacy Collier, and I'm the Child Care Licensing Program Manager for the State of Alaska Child Care Licensing Program. And I also have on the line Christina Holquist, who is our, also works for the Child Care Program Office and is our lead administrator for our Child Care Development Fund. And we work in the Child Care Program Office, and I oversee child care licensing statewide, including the municipality of Anchorage Child Care Licensing Grant. And today I'm going to give you a quick overview of the introduction to child care licensing, and I just wanted to say thank you for inviting us to your meeting today. Next slide, please.
You're on.
So on slide 2, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
So people often wonder why licensing, what are the benefits to licensing, and what do we do? So licensing sets standards to reduce predictable risk. We improve the quality of care to children in Alaska. We conduct announced and unannounced inspections to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of children in care, to determine compliance with licensing statutes and regulations, and to determine if enforcement actions will be issued for violations of regulations or areas of repeated noncompliance. We provide technical assistance, orientation, monitoring, and regulatory-based training to providers. We issue child care licenses to homes, group homes, and centers that are in regulatory compliance, and we investigate reports of concern. Some of the benefits of licensing include being viewed as a professional, having a safe environment for parents to leave their children. Being licensed allows you to care for more children. So if you're not licensed, you legally cannot care for more than 4 unrelated children. And being licensed gives you access to quality and financial resources, such as technical assistance from licensing staff, financial support programs, including the Child Care Assistance Program, the Child Care Grant Program, Alaska In, and the Child Care Food Program. It also gives you access to training and quality support through THREAD, Alaska's Resource and Referral Agency, access to the System for Early Education Development SEED, and Learn and Grow, which is Alaska's quality recognition and assistance system. Next slide.
Next.
So there are 3 types of child care licenses. There's a home, group homes, and center. A licensed home can be licensed for up to 8 children and has specific ratios, which include no more than 2 non-walkers, no more than 3 under 30 months, no more than 5 children in nighttime care, including caregivers' own children under the age of 18, and the family's own children under the age of 13 are counted in those ratios. A licensed group home is a license for 9 to 12 children with specific ratios that include no more than 4 non-walkers, no more than 5 under 30 months, no more than 5 children in nighttime care, including the caregiver's own children under the age of 18, and the family's own children under the age of 13 are counted in ratios. A licensed center is licensed for 13 or more children. Specific center ratios include child to caregiver ratios and maximum group size per classroom. For infants, it's 1 caregiver for every 5 infants, and that age group is birth through 18 months, with a maximum group size of 10 to 2 caregivers. Toddlers is 1 caregiver for every 6 toddlers. Toddlers are aged 19 months through 36 months, with a maximum group size of 12 toddlers to 2 caregivers. Preschool is 1 caregiver for every 10 preschool children, aged 3 and 4 years old. The max group size is 20 preschool children to 2 caregivers. Kindergarten is 1 caregiver for every 14 kindergarten-aged children, 5 and 6-year-olds, with a max group size of 28 children to 2 caregivers. And the last category, school age, is 1 caregiver for 18 school-age children, which is 7 years through 12 years old, and the max group size is 36 children to 2 caregivers. There are inspection permit requirements, specific zoning requirements, and business license requirements based in each community. So it's best to check with the local borough or city to know for sure what is allowed and required to operate each kind of child care facility in your area. All facilities are required to get Alaska business license and approval from the local fire marshal that has jurisdiction in the area to conduct plan reviews and inspections. If a facility has non-public water system or septic system, approval from the Department of Environmental Conservation and water tests may be required. There are additional kitchen and food service requirements for licensed centers that are preparing and serving meals. Next slide, please.
Next.
There are also specific requirements for administrators of each type of licensed child care facility. In a licensed home, the administrator must be 21 years of age, have experience working with children. In a licensed group home, the administrator must be 21 years old and have experience working with children, and the facility must have a second adult caregiver over the age of 18. Licensing recommends that the second caregiver is also 21 years of age or older for the facility to meet regulatory requirements to remain open if the administrator is ever absent. In a licensed center, the administrator must be 21 years of age or older, and with 1 qualified child care associate for every 30 children enrolled. So the administrator and the child care associates must meet minimum education qualifications, which include 12 early childhood education credits, of which 3 credits can be allowed in business to substitute the 3 e-credits, or a current child development associate for the age of the children being cared for, or a current Montessori certificate. A licensed home or group home must be in a residential home where administrator or owner of the facility resides, and a licensed center must be in a commercial building and meet specific provisions such as separate classrooms for each age group, 1 toilet and sink for every 15 individuals, and all licensed facilities are required to have 35 square feet of indoor space for each child and 75 square feet of outdoor space for each child. Next slide, please. The licensing application process for a new facility provisional license includes many requirements. The application for provisional child care license package contains the application for licensure and other supplemental forms required to be completed based on the type of facility that you are applying for. and whether you plan to do any specialized activities or nighttime care. Background checks. All individuals working or residing in a licensed child care facility must pass fingerprint-based criminal history checks through the Alaska Background Check Program. Once you submit your licensing application, your background check process will be initiated. All businesses, including licensed child care facilities, must obtain a state of Alaska business license. Some cities, municipalities, and boroughs also have their own business license requirements. There are also other agencies and applicants may be working with throughout the licensing process meet specific health and safety requirements. These include fire marshal for plan review and or inspection approval, city and zoning permits or conditional use permits, Department of Education Conservation approval for non-public water or septic systems, and annual water tests may be required. There are additional kitchen and food service requirements for licensed centers for parents serving meals. And there are also other requirements such as health and safety training. There are 11 health and safety topics trainings required, including CPR and first aid, and abuse and neglect mandated reporting. Most of these trainings are available for free or as a bundled course for a reduced price. Plan of operation. This includes the facility's organization and staffing chart, the facility's procedures, plans, and rules. This also includes parent policies, plan of supervision, personnel policies, staffing plan, and the disaster preparedness and emergency evacuation plan. Next slide, please. Some of the costs associated with becoming licensed include the state of Alaska municipal, city, rural business licenses, fire inspection fees, city and zoning permits or conditional use permits, fingerprint-based criminal background checks, fingerprinting and Alaska background check processing fees, possible repairs or modifications to a home or facility, well water test fees if applicable, equipment and supplies, and education and training. Next slide, please. The completion of the provisional child care licensing application process includes a completed application packet, orientation, and on-site inspection. Once the provisional child care licensing application packet is received complete, the licensing specialist will schedule a licensing orientation with the administrator of the facility. A licensing orientation is a review of all regulatory requirements for licensing based on the type of facility being licensed. These take approximately 2 hours and include time for the administrator to get their questions answered. A licensing orientation can be completed virtually or in person, and we are currently in the process of creating an online administrator orientation that once completed can be taken at any time and will provide a certificate of completion once the provider has completed it. An on-site inspection is required to be conducted to ensure the facility is in regulatory compliance. The on-site inspection includes a walkthrough of the entire facility and premises. If any issues are found, they must be corrected prior to licensure. Once all of those requirements are completed and the facility is in regulatory compliance, the license is issued effective the first of the month following the complete application process. The provisional license is good for 1 year. Next slide, please. Once the facility is licensed, they will receive at least 2 on-site inspections a year. 1 unannounced health and safety inspection and 1 annual full compliance inspection or renewal inspection. Investigations are conducted when a report of concern is received. All inspections and investigation result in a written report being issued to the facility notifying them whether there were any violations found during that inspection or investigation. A facility needs to initiate the request to renew their license with an application. The renewal process requires submission of a renewal application and a report of change, as applicable for the facility needing to report program changes. Once a renewal application is submitted complete, an on-site inspection is scheduled and conducted to ensure regulatory compliance. After the provisional first-year license, all renewal licenses are issued for 2 years. Next slide, please. So that was a quick overview of the licensing process, and I am available for any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from council at this point? Councilmember Barnwell.
I have a few questions. Thanks for the good presentation. I wonder, I'm trying to get my head around if why we have so few daycare centers, childcare centers in our state. I know the ADN had a good article on that today about how much money we're losing as a state and how desperate people are. Why aren't more people opening childcare centers? It doesn't sound that onerous to get a license, and the money, if you had 13 kids in your own home, I think that was the number I came up with, but let's say you had 10 at $1,000 a month or even 500, that's pretty good money. So I'm just curious why there's so few people getting the licenses and jumping into this opportunity.
I think this is Stacey Collier. So I think that's a magic question. I think that during the pandemic, we lost a lot of child care facilities. We lost facilities to people moving or retiring. I think there was some fear during the pandemic, and caring for children and having access to people at all times kind of caused fears. That's some of the reasons why child care facilities closed during the pandemic. But since the pandemic, it's really been staffing. So I agree with what you're saying. I previously owned my own child care facility in my home, and I feel like I was very successful. I did it when my children were young. I actually had a bad child care experience, quit my job, decided to stay home with my children, and stayed with them until they started school, and then I went back to work. And I watched other children and was licensed and watched other children their same age until they kind of all graduated to kindergarten, and then I went back to work. But yes, I feel like if you're organized and you care for children and you're there for the right reason, it could be. I always say that I had more money when I worked in child care because I didn't spend my money going out to lunch and do gas and other things that you do when you work outside of the home. But I really don't. I can't answer the magical question of why people are not opening child care facilities. I think centers is harder because of staffing, and it's really hard because the income is lower in child care facilities than in right now, like in Anchorage. I can give you an example. The grocery stores are paying a lot more money than the child care facilities are, so they're losing staff to that. But in a home, we've seen a lot more homes stay open during the pandemic and be more successful since then than we have the centers due to lack of staffing.
And you had a
Follow-up question on that was, so I've heard that it's really hard, it's onerous to get a license for daycare, but your presentation doesn't make it look that difficult. Have you made changes in the last year or two that have made it easier to get licensing, or have things changed on your end?
A few years ago, we changed the licensing process, the packet. We tried to streamline it as much as possible and give instructions like if you're going to be this type of facility, you need this form. If you're not, you need that form. It's all based on the type of facility that they want to apply for. If they want to do specializations, they have to fill out a specialization form. If they don't want to fill out don't want to do specializations, that form is not required. So I think we've streamlined it as much as possible, except for putting it online, which we're working on trying to get a new system to be able to make our applications accessible online because it is still paperwork process. But we also completely revamped the whole renewal process to 2 pages. One is a renewal application that says, yes, I want to renew my license. And the second one is, here's any changes that I'm reporting for my business. So that went to 2-page process, and providers reported that they really appreciate that. But I think a lot of the hang-up in the application process is not necessarily the paperwork, it's some of those outside requirements, city and zoning, fire marshal, getting time to get those plan reviews done and inspected and get the results. Background check process can be cumbersome and take some time. And the state had a cyber attack on our system, and that changed the background check process at that time to a paperwork process, which slowed it down, and then they had to fix it and bring it back up. And at that part, they required whitelisting, which was an extra security measure they put in place, and that has become a barrier for some facilities to get those background check applications into the system. And I think that in one of our child care task force meetings recently, it was announced that they're working on that to eliminate that within the next 6 months to make that easier for applicants to apply against his background check.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions at this point? Okay, I think we don't have any more questions right now, if you want to go ahead.
Thank you so much, Stacy. I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. Next, we're going to have Stephanie Berglund with Thread Alaska. She will be presenting to us. Stephanie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Stephanie, for being here. I'll go through your slides like I did with Stacy, and we'll just get that up on the screen here. We're on the first page. Ready when you are.
Great, thank you. Well, hello everyone. I'm Stephanie Berglund, the CEO of Thread, and I want to start by thanking you for the invitation to join you and talk about childcare. I really appreciate your interest and focus on childcare, as childcare is really important community infrastructure that supports families and the greater workforce and, of course, your local economy. Before I dive in, I do want to say a special thank you to Casey Warner for her leadership and really driving the childcare hyper efforts in your community. Casey's been a great partner of Thread, and we really appreciate her work and great leadership in your community. So next slide, I was asked to share about the landscape of childcare across the state and some trends of current supports for childcare and kind of what's happening in our childcare ecosystem. So I'll be sharing a quick overview of Thread and what we do, including our services and supports for licensed childcare. I'll talk a little bit about childcare in Alaska, some of the pre- and post-pandemic trends that we're seeing, and some of the current needs that childcare is facing. So you can jump to the slide with the Thread vision at the top. So Thread is a private nonprofit here in Alaska. We are the child care resource and referral organization across the state, working to promote quality early childhood education with a focus on child care. Our vision is that all Alaskans have access to affordable and high quality child care. Next slide, please. Thread provides direct services in the 3 lines of businesses that you see here. We provide direct services to families, which include free child care referrals, and provide resources on how to find and select child care. So how that works is we have a database with all of the licensed and regulated early childhood programs across the state, and we customize referrals for families based on their family and their child's needs. We work with families to help them be informed consumers when they're shopping for and selecting child care. We also provide parenting support, and that includes assisting families in how to access financial assistance to pay for child care. Next, Thread's largest menu of services and support includes those to our early educators and the early education programs themselves, most of which are licensed child care programs across the state. We serve as the largest trainer and professional development provider for early educators across Alaska. Our professional development services focus on building skills and knowledge about early childhood development, including assisting early educators in achieving the CDA, which is a Child Development Associate. It's really a benchmark in quality for early educator teachers. Our services to early childhood education programs include support and resources for over 400 small businesses in Alaska who are operating licensed and regulated child care centers, child care homes, Head Start programs, preschools, military, and tribal child care programs. Our services include technical assistance and consultation aimed at program quality improvement goals. We also house and manage the Alaska Seed, which is the system for early education development, providing a menu of professional development resources and financial supports for early educators. And we house and manage Learn and Grow. And Learn and Grow is Alaska's quality recognition and improvement system, which provides a framework for building high-quality programs. And we work with communities and businesses toward their child care solutions. So in this area, presentations like tonight, our work focuses on advocacy and providing sector data. We work with several partners across the state, and ultimately our aim is to help strengthen the early childhood and childcare sector. Next slide. So let's dive into childcare in Alaska. So we can go to the slide with the access bar at the top. So Thread looks at data and trends in kind of three main areas. We talk about childcare and childcare data related to access, affordability, and quality of childcare. So just prior to the pandemic, we conducted our most recent early care and learning economic impact study, which included a statewide survey of families. This is helpful data and context as the report shows that childcare had many challenges at the time. In the 2020 report, families reported access to childcare is getting more difficult across Alaska in order to get to work, school, or training. In fact, the lack of childcare in Alaska inhibited 1 in 5 working families from participating in the workforce or working more hours, which they wanted, and there are roughly about half of the regulated spaces needed to meet the demand of families. Next slide. 61% of Alaska is in crisis related to the access to childcare needs. This is called a childcare desert, and it's defined by an area where more than 50 children younger than 5 years old that have either no provider or so few options that children outnumber the available providers 3 to 1. Seward is a community that meets that definition of a childcare desert. Next slide, please. In addition to access, data shows us that the price of childcare is really unaffordable for most families. In 2019, families were paying an average of 17% of their household income on childcare. And as you can see from this slide, for single parents, they're paying much more. And for families with 2 children, the average payment for childcare was their family's largest expense, even exceeding their housing costs. The price for childcare in 2020 was an average of almost $12,000 for infants and $11,000 for preschoolers annually. Childcare in Alaska costs more than college tuition at a time when parents are at the beginning of their careers. At the next slide, with the girl with the bubbles, you can see that the early care and learning sector accounts for over $340 million in annual spending. Most of that spending is through private pay from parents. So you can see that parents are really shouldering the majority of the costs for our child care system. Next slide, please. So while we all want more access to affordable and accessible child care, we must ensure it is quality care and, when possible, supporting children in the highest quality early childhood education programs possible. The quality of child care is extremely important. You can see here that just 33% of our students are entering kindergarten are considered prepared. This is both the state average and in the Kenai Peninsula Borough School District. So focus on the quality of early childhood programs is key. A healthy start in life is important because our brains develop the most before the age of 5. And this means that the foundations of our development, our health, and all of our learning start before we enter school. This also means that our earliest experiences shape our trajectory of success or not. So when young children have positive experiences, both at home and in community-based settings, like quality childcare, they're more likely to enter school ready and do better overall. Next slide, please. It is no secret that the #1 indicator of quality in a childcare program is the teacher. Currently in Alaska, just 10% of our childcare teachers have above high school diploma, and there's a high turnover rate in the sector. And these trends impact the quality of childcare. Early educators are some of the lowest paid professionals in Alaska, and while programs want to pay teachers more, they simply cannot with the current business model. It was great you asked this question earlier because while parents can't afford to pay really any more for quality childcare, at the same time childcare businesses are barely making ends meet when they rely on family tuition alone. With not enough revenue to cover the true cost of providing quality care, we see programs cut costs where necessary, and for most, their largest line item is personnel, and so they're balancing their budgets on their personnel, which that impacts program quality. So next slide. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening now in some recent trends in childcare. Next slide, where it says supply and demand. Related to access, we have seen a decline in childcare. As Stacy talked about, we've actually seen close to a fifth of the licensed childcare programs close over the last 3 years. And while there have been new programs open, it's not been at the rate prior to the pandemic, and it's not up enough to offset the level of closures. So this has resulted in a net loss of available quality care. Of the current licensed childcare programs, most are unable to serve their full capacity of children due to a workforce shortage, which is really difficult to fill with that high competition that we all are having for workers. They have low wages and few benefit offerings. For affordability during the pandemic, we saw a shift in families leaving employment or having reduced hours, which made childcare even more unaffordable. And while families are struggling to afford childcare, we're seeing some of the childcare prices increase, and overall prices are outpacing inflation for the third consecutive year. Next slide, please. In 2021, the State Chamber of Commerce, in partnership with Thread, conducted a survey and found that over 75% of parents surveyed reported missing work due to childcare issues, and 36% of families are postponing higher education and training due to the lack of childcare. The study found that Alaska has what they called an untapped potential for our economy due to the inability to meet families' childcare needs, and that childcare issues are impacting businesses. This includes $152 million cost to businesses for absences and employee turnover costs directly related to childcare issues. Next slide, please. There's been a large effort during COVID to deliver COVID relief funding to childcare. Thread has been really proud to partner with the State Department of Health, the Child Care Program Office, and other philanthropy partners to deliver child care stabilization support. The largest piece of this has come from federal CRSA and ARPA COVID-19 relief, which has been earmarked for child care. To date, Thread has awarded over $50 million to child care, including 3 phases of child care stabilization grants, wage stipends for early educators, and offering many of our Thread programs and services I talked about earlier free of charge. These resources have been critical and have kept most child care open across the state. Next slide, please. There have been several national and state surveys of child care over the last few years. According to a December study by the National Association for the Education of Young Children, of child care programs surveyed in Alaska, they report that the resources have helped programs, but they're still struggling, especially with staff shortages. This results in serving fewer children and having longer wait lists, which you can see here is consistent with national trends. But where we trend higher is the number of early educators indicating that they plan to leave their job. And on the next slide, over 88% of child care programs indicated that burnout and exhaustion are contributing to problems retaining teachers. This is a high stress and high intense job across the state. So what we're experiencing now is ongoing child care supply needs, now more greatly impacting employers' ability to recruit and retain employees across the state, and child care is more unaffordable for families than ever. And at the same time, child care programs are facing staff shortages and are reporting struggling to recover, even with federal relief aid, which is now close to sunsetting. Next slide, please. So on a positive note, Thread is hearing more interest from communities like yours and from businesses who are ready to help and want to be a part of child care solutions. There's only opportunity to support child care, and we need bold policies and support to work with and support families and child care programs. We know when children have access to supports for early learning, their physical and social and emotional development support, that they're more prepared when they enter kindergarten and are more successful throughout school and life. In 16 short years, the young children in our community today are our workforce for tomorrow, and with a strong start, they will be better trained, have higher education and training, and ultimately will be more employable for all of us and contribute to the strength of our economy. So I'll close with these few tips on how your council can support child care. One is investing in public funding to support the sector is really needed, especially at a time when we want to support families staying and working in Alaska. There's opportunity to support the child care workforce The child care professionals, as I mentioned, are responsible for preparing our youngest Alaskans for school and beyond, yet their pay does not reflect their important work. And quality child care that's licensed and regulated supports stronger families and has demonstrated short and long-term benefits for young children, including stronger language development, higher high school graduation rates, and increased long-term health. These positive outcomes save us all money in the short and long term. And Fred recognizes that businesses are also an important partner in child care. Many businesses employ working families and parents and recognize employees' needs related to accessible, affordable, and quality care. Child care is a large impact on our economy as these working families, including the early childhood workforce, earn more than $1.9 billion in wages because of access to child care. It's really critical infrastructure needed to get and keep Alaskans working. So while there's broad-based agreement that the time of early childhood is important and that quality child care matters, the issues of child care are complex and therefore present multiple ways and ideas for how we can work to solve and structure support. We all want Alaska to be a place where our families and young children grow and thrive, and Fred is here to support you in making child care a priority in your city. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Questions for this presenter? Councilmember Barnwell.
Thank you for the good presentation. I had a couple of questions. One, do you have models from other countries or other parts of the world where they are thriving with child care, or do you have other models that are working that you can base, that we can tweak our systems to make more efficient, or not?
Thank you for your question. Yes, there are great examples from other countries and from other states and cities where they're making investments in child care. And the largest difference, to oversimplify it, is more public and governmental support. So the system is highly subsidized, similar to our higher education system as well.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So on that note, I'm a retired teacher. I don't know if there's a child care degree or program in our universities. Do we have, and how would that even work? I mean, if you had a degree in child care, obviously the child care, it would be hard to pay for those people to augment their degree or reflect their degree. Is there a model for that, or how does that work?
We do have early childhood degree programs in our university system. Unfortunately, a few years back they were cut as part of the large UA system budget cuts, but have returned. And so as they're building back, that's an important piece as we all build our pipeline for early educators. I think what you're also hinting at is, to be paid $13 an hour and also be working toward your degree, that higher quality and highly educated workforce in child care. So what we often see is as teachers get degrees, we often see that they move into maybe Head Start or the school district system where they then receive benefits that really compensate them for that higher education.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councilmember West.
Thank you for the presentation. I just have a quick question here. So, is there a time of year where, especially in the state of Alaska, where child care is lacking more so? For example, is during the school year, is that a higher demand, or is it summertime where there's a higher demand?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the demand for child care is year-round. We do see changes, of course, when school's in session and not, for increases in demand for before and after school, of course, during the school year, and then summer, often camp-type programs in the summer. And but for young children, 0 to 5 who do not participate in our school system, we do see for working families, often with all the adults in their household working, needing full day, full year care.
Go ahead.
The reason why I ask is, especially since we're in a tourism-based economy here in Seward, there are multiple businesses that are only open 90 or 100 days out of the year, so they're, and that building, those commercial buildings sit. Is it possible, now granted it's not a solution, but is it possible to have a daycare in one of those buildings for 9 months out of the year, when those, if those businesses were open to it, or does it have to be a daycare facility 12 months out of the year?
That's a great question. I might defer to Stacy on that one for in your community, but is there anything regulatory against that, Stacy?
No, we actually have facilities that are summer-only programs or also run as a different program. We have a facility in Skagway that runs as an adult like day hab center during one part of the year, and then a child care facility during their largest tourism time of the year to be able to provide child care. So it's just completely that their hours and location of the facility, they're licensed for different things, and it's very clear. They close at a certain date with that type of license, and they do something else during the other part.
Councilmember West.
Last follow-up question. So, do you think that it would be advantageous for our community if a program like Hyper was to reach out to some of these commercial businesses, possibly, since those buildings are vacant 9 months out of the year and there's no income whatsoever, they may be willing to give a hand up to the community in need for a minimal income, since their expenses are the same whether they have somebody in the building or not. Do you think that would be advantageous for our community?
I think it would be something great to explore also. I mean, I think there's partnerships in other communities also with like schools. So like in the summertime when a school's closed, they may allow for their classrooms or their multi-purpose room and playground to be used for like the licensed child care facilities when school's not in session. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to look at other businesses and opportunities in your area.
Thank you.
And this is Stephanie. I would encourage that as well. I think we are seeing other cities explore that, creative uses for vacant spaces locally that can be leveraged in terms of, helping to offset, rent or mortgages, some of the utility costs, some of the shared janitorial costs, that can be helped offset to strengthen the business model. I think one of the things we've seen at Thread is more of a struggle to find the business kind of owner-operators, and so I know Casey, I don't want to speak for you, Casey, but run into some of those same struggles in your community as well. So I think building in incentives and support for owner-operators and administrators would be an important key to that business.
Councilmember Barton.
I had another question. One of my daughters, we lived in Unalaska when they were younger, and they had the city actually had a program that was supported by the city, a daycare program. And actually my wife ran it for a year or two, and it was a very stressful time in our family because that's a lot of work. But I do remember there was a study, I think my daughters were also in a city, Unalaska had quite a bit of money back then, city augmented or city supported preschool program, and they were part of a national study on, and they followed and tracked I think one of our daughters up through college, and just to see how that data looked, kids that were in quality daycare and or preschool, how that tracked out. And I thought that was really interesting. Do you guys have that kind of data that supports quality daycare?
Yeah, this is Stephanie. Thank you for your question. I'd be interested to know what study that is. There actually have not been more than a handful, of studies, longitudinal studies like that to show that. Where we focus more at Thread and where we have the strongest data in Alaska is kind of the information that I shared about the kindergarten preparedness and readiness. So looking at how we can support our youngest Alaskans with a stronger start so they're ultimately more prepared for school. So, when we look at children who
need lots of early intervention, lots of additional special education support that's costing our public school systems a lot of money. So looking at how we can help reduce that and save money by, supporting families and young children earlier. So more of our data and the studies of that show more about like a spotlight on that transition into kindergarten and those early years. Really looking at the benchmarks of third grade reading, 8th grade math, and graduation rates as part of that trajectory.
Councilmember Farmer.
Sorry. This is the last comment. I can talk about this all night. I just want to stay on the record that I've 30 years of teaching and then raising 3 daughters, and my wife involved in preschool, and I'm convinced, and I'm preaching the choir here, I know, but I just want to say this to the public. I'm convinced that that the most important time for a family is obviously it's almost exponential. It's like it's pregnancy out into about age 6 or 7. That is the most critical time for development of humans. And if they don't have that quality, that love, and that attend care, they're going to suffer all over their lives. And as a teacher for 30 years, I watched that trend, and I watched special ed needs increase and increase. And it is costing our society a heck of a lot of money. We have to figure out how to give our kids quality start in life, and that takes a lot of thinking and careful attention. So thanks for your presentation.
Thank you. Any other, Councilmember Finch?
For Hyper and Thread talking about using the schools in the summertime, have you guys approached the school districts to try to open that up for the communities? I mean, you've got the best information on it as when it all approach the schools.
TC here with Red. I did approach our school district maybe about 1.5 years ago, and I did run up against some barriers. And at that time, I was looking at an effective way of increasing licensed childcare in our. And I think that there's some really great models out there in partnership with school districts that we could utilize that space and that partnership to not only provide childcare to our community, but also provide some education to our higher levels of students at the high school level, get them a little bit of early childhood development training, education, whether they choose to go into that profession themselves or to care for their own children once they become parents.
Okay. Okay, go ahead, Casey. Great.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Stephanie. I really appreciate you being here today. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to Hyper's presentation. I'm going to be presenting with Rosie Patnode, who is our new program developer. So there'll be a few slides where she will come up. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Casey Warner, and I am the Happy Youth Programs and Education Resource Program Director. Rosie Patnode recently came on as our program developer, and she oversees the development of active programming in Seward, as well as the implementation of those programs. Hyper's accomplishments, in under a year of our new Norwegian Cruise Line funding that was a pass-through through the city here, which thank you so much for those funds. It has truly made a difference. Within our first year, we were able to double our licensed childcare in the Seward area. We were able to work with Josie's Daycare. She was a group home license status, and we brought her up to, or she was an in-home license status, and we were able to support her in coming into a group home licensing status, where she's able to serve 12 families. We also worked with Sprouts Preschool and opening their doors, where they serve 20 students in their part-time program. And Hyper has been working with our state partners, including Help Me Grow Alaska, the A2P2, Early Childhood Network, Thread, and we've been working with the Child Care Program Office, and we're continuing to follow what's happening within the state so that way we can help bring those supports and those trends to the Seward community. Who are our providers in Seward? We have Coast to Coast Kids. They have a group home licensing status and they serve 12 children. Josie's Kids with 12 slots at a group home license status as well. We have Sprouts Preschool with 20 slots and they are a child care center licensing status. We have an application in progress right now. They're going to be an in-home licensing status. We're hoping to have that submitted to the state within the week. Hyper's active programs. I'm going to have Rosie come up and present on those since she's been working on developing and implementing those programs.
Hi, my name's Rosie. I am the program manager for Hyper. I oversee our grant program. Our grant program is a $7,500 startup cost and a $2,500 bonus once the licensing with the state has gone through for 6 months. So my job is to help our providers navigate the application process. And that is building out their policies, their business requirements, their well and septic requirements, fire marshal, on-site inspections, helping them get their homes ready and helping them correct any issues afterwards. And I just want to say it was brought up with Fred that most of our providers have a high school diploma or less. And I have a 4-year degree and I find this incredibly challenging to navigate. We have just launched our RISE program. It's Retainment, Incentives, and Support for Educators. It's a quality initiative program that has a biannual financial stipend to our providers. It encourages them to get higher education in early childhood classes, and the higher level they register with SEED, the more financial incentive they can receive. Now, with this, they have to maintain their licensing, so this helps maintain our licensed providers within the community, and we are at 100% enrollment with our providers as of now. We're working on various provider meet and greets that develop a space for current and potential providers to network and share ideas. It acknowledges current providers and their commitment to Seward, and we're bringing resources and education to the community. That can look different at each event, but it might be CPR, it might be different annual requirements. They change every meet and greet changes. And then we're doing different community engagements. The website, our news articles, program advertising, community presentations on current happenings, and our future goals. I did want to touch on location has been one of my biggest challenges. And that really excites me, Randy, because I have been reaching out to seasonal buildings left and right. So I'm totally excited because it sounds like you have some ideas, so I think that we should definitely chat about that. But I'll hand it back over to Casey.
Thank you, Rosie. So the economic development of childcare in Seward. Through Hyper's work, we've been able to provide 7 year-round positions. 3 of those are within the Seward Prevention Coalition. 4 of those are new licensed provider positions. We currently have 2 more potential providers that are engaged in the Hyper programming, which could provide up to 16 more licensed slots in our community. Second, we've created 22 licensed slots and are on track to add another 24 licensed slots. We're on track to surpass our 40 childcare slots, which was our original goal when I first came and started speaking to City Council and City Administration about our childcare issue. And all of that has happened within a 2-year time frame. It's definitely something that I would like to acknowledge. Things move a little bit slowly, but that's it. I mean, we're already on track to meeting our goal and surpassing that. Sustainability. Given the challenges of frequent staff turnover that we've heard Fred speak about, inadequate staff compensation, and the demanding educational prerequisites for a child care center director, achieving workforce sustainability within our community appears currently unfeasible. By helping individual licensed childcare businesses, Hyper has successfully achieved a 2-fold increase and is poised to surpass the initial target of 40 licensed slots. All of this has been accomplished while operating at a significantly lower cost compared to running a traditional brick and mortar childcare center. By realigning our programming towards in-home providers, we are effectively extending our ability to nurture and sustain childcare educators over the long term. This approach not only ensures the longevity of our workforce, but also generates a more sustainable impact on our local economy and contributes to the expansion of our childcare infrastructure. Programs that we're working on implementing on top of what is already active in our community. We've started up a partnership with Rural Cap's self-help housing program. As you've heard Rosie speak, some of her interested providers are having issues finding suitable locations to start up their programs. Rural Cap started up the self-help housing program over in Sterling a number of years ago because of their families at the Head Start program there were expressing the need of sustainable and affordable housing. They work with a USDA grant, and what they do is they purchase about 8 or 12 lots at a time. They take applicants from the community, from low and middle income individuals and families. And once those families are identified, they begin working under their licensed contractor to build their neighborhood. So all these families work together to build their homes, and no one can move into their home until all homes are completed. Once they're in the program, they also access different financial education and home ownership trainings and educations through their program. How Hyper fits into this is that these individuals are going to be naturally building their support system while they're working together to build these homes. And we would like to identify 2 to 3 of those individuals working within this neighborhood to begin accessing the Hyper supports that we have put in place here and become those licensed providers for their neighbors. We're also going to be looking at implementing the Hyper Education Bridge program where we'll be helping our licensed providers access higher education trainings. Not only will we help with those costs of the education, but also giving them a financial incentive of the hours that they're going to be working to obtain those education and trainings after they've already worked a full day working with children in their home or in their program. We'll also be working to develop our family scholarship program. That's where we're going to help families with the cost of childcare and also providing a sustainable source of funding for our licensed programs. Partnerships that are going to be further developed down the line. We've been working with our borough, and hopefully we'll be looking at doing a borough-wide initiative to not only support the Seward community but also our greater region. And local business partnerships, so thank you so much, Randy, for bringing up the locations. That is a great idea, and like Rosie said, we'd love to meet with you and discuss that further. Local business partnerships is something that I have heard spoken about across different meetings around the state, and I would definitely like to bring that home to Seward. Hyper's continued success. We were one of 17 Community Innovation Grant awardees. There was a total of 68 applicants across the state that applied, and we were one of the chosen communities. I would really like to thank the Child Care Program Office, the State of Alaska, and Thread Alaska with making that opportunity available to the Seward community. And leave it open for questions.
Okay, any questions for Casey? Councilmember Wells.
Just looking at the first, on this page, I had a hard time reading it without my glasses, of course, but it says that Hyper has created 14 full-time childcare slots by the end of the year, and I'm wondering if that's already included on who are Seward's childcare providers, or is there an additional 14 that is going to be coming along, and if so, where at?
They are included in who is our providers.
They are already included,
yes.
Okay. And then, I have a question.
No, it does not include the one that we're going to be sending for this week.
But that one is the 8
Yes,
that's coming, okay. Okay, so so that's additional to the 14 that you've recently, okay, cool. Looking at the financial statements, and I'm just curious how the FNBA checking account has a negative balance of $513.
I would like to deflect to the executive director on that one.
Do I just been look at, I don't have that.
We can look at
I
mine.
don't have a printed one, sorry.
Let me look at a second, I was on,
Sure.
or bookkeeper was gonna.
You're more than welcome to flip through your paperwork.
So realistically, what this is, because we don't actually have a negative amount, a significant portion of the funds that we received from the Norwegian cruise line has been invested. So hopefully then we can use that investment to continue our programming, because we just take out a certain percentage every year to go towards these, long-term initiatives, and to extend that funding out for the next decade to 2 decades. To keep like the sustainability of this program. So what is likely going on with this, but I can get you a more definitive answer from our accountant, is that these are probably, because it's through June 30th, there's probably things that were like billed out, but money hadn't been received in certain areas or moved around. And so there isn't a negative actual amount. We still have, we held out about $100,000 of the funds, invested $400,000. And we've been working off that $100,000, and then now with the initiatives grant. And I don't think we've even spent out that full $100,000 over the past year. And so I can get you the number on what has been spent out. But the initiatives grant that's coming in the fall will cover a significant of a lot of this programming over the next 2 years while the stuff that's been invested in the cruise.
I just have a follow-up question. If you flip over to the other page there, highlighted the salary for the Seward Prevention Coalition for the year. I believe it was $33,000 and some change.
Yeah.
How many employees is that?
So that is, for the past year, it was mostly Casey working part-time, so half-time FTE. And then, when did we hire you in? February, so it included a percentage of an FTE. So it's about, since February is about a 1 FTE for that position. In anticipation of this, we knew that this big innovation grant was coming up. We wrote for $1.5 million.
Wonderful.
We haven't been awarded the total amount. We're hoping that somewhere around $800 to $1 million will be brought into the community, go specifically towards increasing licensed childcare. And so with that, knowing how big of a, kind of job that was going to be, that's where we decided to keep, kind of keep Casey on to write and do the advocacy stuff for that grant, knowing that it would be probably 2 full-time positions once that was awarded, and both of them are moving into full-time, pretty much, once that is awarded. Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. The last question I have is, I thought I saw in there that it's 7, you're gonna have 7 employees, is that, or 7 directors?
No,
Where did I see 7?
We had 7, we've employed 7 new people in our community. 3
Got it.
with SPC, so there's another part of the innovation grant that's looking at bolstering our museum. So we're looking at putting in a children's museum is where they would be running licensed summer camps for families to kind of fill that void. There's a lot of museums that do that. They do weekly summer camps as a child care opportunity. And so that program would be getting licensed to provide those summer camps. And so that's another, but that's still only a part-time position as well.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah. The other ones are actual child care providers.
Okay.
We're getting along in time, we've got less than 10 minutes, so go ahead, Councilmember Barnwell, and then.
Can you kind of clarify how the Seward Prevention Coalition has different facets to it? And is this hyper just one facet of Seward Prevention?
Yes. So our overall goal as a Seward Prevention Coalition is to reduce adverse childhood experiences in our community and build resilience in our youth. We have several different programs under our umbrella. So one of them is Bloom, that works with families prenatal to 5 to build connection, reduce postpartum depression, teach parenting skills, work with families in their homes to meet family goals, and to build kind of a really solid community among our young families, which is a huge protective factor for our children. And then we have Sources of Strength that works in our middle school and high school. It works with developing peer leaders to increase help-seeking behavior in our youth, but also to help them to understand their own protective factors and sources of strength that they have in their life to lean into in times of struggle, rather than high-risk behavior. We're implementing the Icelandic prevention model through our program called Youth 360. The Iceland reduced their alcohol use rates among their youth from 50% down to 7%, and have held that over the last couple decades, which is just phenomenal. So we're working with Iceland to implement that here. They also have Hyper that works on, obviously, what you guys know. And then we do mindfulness and meditation stuff in the community as well, including implementing mindful schools in the elementary school, and Breathe for Change, which is also a mindfulness program that teachers get trained in. And then we're working on youth mental health too, at a statewide level.
There's a lot going on.
In the last couple minutes, is there anyone in the audience that wanted to comment or speak on this? Okay, sure, you don't have to come up if you don't want. It's a work session.
The Hyper Group did present a PAC app about a year ago or so, and we try to support them. I know there were some problems with some real estate issues, but I'm really glad to see that they've stayed the course, and it sounds like they have a real contribution to the community.
Thank you, Bruce. Anything else? We could wrap this up and get ready for our meeting. Councilmember Barnwell?
I'm just really excited about this. I really appreciate all the work. It just sounds like you guys are spot on. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on. I can't think of a better thing to do for our community than this, honestly, so thanks.
Thank you. And I hadn't ever seen Thread's presentation. I thought it was really interesting that we were actually like checking all their boxes of stuff that they recommend that communities be doing. So I actually didn't know we were doing that. So.
Okay, I wanted to, right, I agree. I think this is wonderful. It's good to have the presentation and put all the pieces together. And if there's anything else? Okay, I'll close this work session then at 6:41. And we can get ready for our 7 o'clock meeting. I just want to point out again, please put the reserve signs back on the chairs for the Japanese delegation.